Wow, you have such a diverse ancestors in you.
Relatively.
Yeah.
And I should say my children will have even more diverse ancestors.
I
My
see.
wife is from Sri Lanka, and a very strong and resonant tradition in her family of remembering and honoring on a regular basis the ancestors. There's a special room in her grandparents' house, my mother's, my wife's parents' house, that honors their ancestors. And every year when we go back to Sri Lanka, my daughter and now my son pays a visit to that with her grandparents to honor and remember the ancestors. So I feel very fortunate that I can have such a rich kind of inheritance in terms of knowledge of the ancestors and awareness of the ancestors to and bequeath that to my children.
Right. So, yeah, we are also becoming ancestors for the future generations like them, your children, and so my children as well. So, do you know there's a big culture in Japan, which is ancestor worship. So you may imagine or not. So when it comes to Japanese Buddhism or Zen, people often imagine Zen meditation, mindfulness practice or something. But actually, for Japanese, most of the Japanese, Buddhism is all about ancestors, taking care of ancestors. So, and so many people still invite Buddhist monks to the family funeral, and so that the invited monk lead a ceremony and chanting and offering some rituals and kind of things. So having said that, I think so I have a question to you, to the guest in this podcast. So this world, we are living a very noisy world, right? So many things are going on, happening, and new innovations and ideas come out every year, every moment. And so, but yes, I'm a cleaning monk, so I think it's very important to wash away things before or when you create new thing, right? Otherwise, your room will be very messy, right?
Very true.
So, like this, I think it's good to think about closing things in our generation or ending things in our generation before creating new things, right? So let's imagine. Yeah, so I will lead the ceremony, the funeral. We have funeral of some whatever concepts or habits, culture, whatever. Okay, so I will give you an example, which could be GDP. Yeah, so I appreciate the role the GDP played in the past, which made a great contribution for our economy to progress. But now we should have another measurement, right? Which is more good for sustainability and things. So I'm not denying the value of GDP, but it should be the time for us to shift from GDP to something, right? So in this way, if we have some sort of funeral for something, what could be that? From your perspective.
Yeah, right. That is such a good question. There are a couple of things that are top of mind, and one of them goes back to some of my earliest memories. You know, I think generally all of us are about age 7 or 8 when we start to really form memories that stay with us for the rest of our lives. And I'm keenly aware of my responsibility with my daughter right now, who's 6 years old, and you know we're getting to that point where she is really going to be remembering things for the rest of her life very keenly. When I was 7 years old, my mother took me to Hiroshima in Japan, and we were there for, it was either the 39th or the 40th anniversary of the bombing, and we talked to survivors of the bombing in very close quarters in private sessions. And so you asked what I would like to see a funeral for. In my perfect world, we see a funeral for all nuclear weapons. By the time the mantle gets passed to my daughter and my son and all of our children. I think we live in a world where such weapons are useless in terms of quote unquote winning a war. You can never win a nuclear war. We can only destroy all of humanity with them. So the most obvious funeral that I would like to hold would be for all nuclear weapons. Perhaps less obviously in my life, considering my last name is Skinner, I am more recently, I've been considering the impact that my lifelong consumption of meat, of land-based meat in particular, has had. And this is something it's easier said than done for me to give up in my life, just because every so often I have the craving. But in my wife's family, because she comes from Sri Lanka, I do think that there are health reasons why my children should eat meat only very sparingly, if at all, and frankly, for the long-term consequences to the planet, and to other living beings. It's something that if there were a funeral for the consumption of meat in my family by the end of my life, that is passed on to my children, so that they don't consume land-based animals. I think that would be something that is within our power to do, and something that ultimately would leave them happier and healthier and more responsible citizens of the world.
So the second one is something everyone can start.
Right.
Yeah, in there at home.
And then the third one, somewhat related to that, on the topic of consumption, and this is very much coming back to my work. Our hope is that by the time I retire, and by the time we pass the world on to the next generations, we don't have to even think about the products that we buy, because we know that they will be made by people who are working with dignity. And I think that is also very much within our grasp, and that's all of these goals, whether it's the eradication of nuclear weapons, whether it's the ethical production and consumption of meat or food or clothing. All of those are within our grasp if we work together.
So I heard your three goals, and I found that there should be common things across all three goals, which is rights, human rights, and also animal rights, and even the right of this planet. So working around human rights. So let me ask the last question. What do you envision the future of human rights?
The future of human rights, I think, fundamentally will be one which shifts from a perception that rights are almost a top-down granting of those in power to those with less power, to a bottom-up realization that all of us have power, and all of us are connected, and fundamentally, if there are those without rights realized, then none of us have rights realized, and I think that can be difficult to see at a time when there is a perception and a reality that across the globe many countries are becoming more authoritarian and falling into those systems of governance that where you have a few people at the top who are extremely powerful and grant rights to everybody else. But fundamentally, the truth remains that collectively, the citizens of the world are the ones that hold power, and I think a recognition that all of us collectively have the power, have the responsibility, and are connected that way will serve the next generations increasingly well. That's both an aspiration and a belief.
Yeah, so I agree with you. So given the situation where we see many fragmentation, separation, and polarization in many different places. Now, so the foundation of human rights is shaking. So in this age, we need to find a way of creating the temporary foundation between two persons who meet as a total stranger, right? So yeah, so I agree that as you said, so we need a bottom-up reciprocal way of creating bonding in ad hoc human right relationship, in a sense.
I think that's right. You know, Shoke, when you and I met in China, in Tianjin, we were at a gathering of many peers and individuals from all over the world. And what was so striking to me, and I, at the time of that meeting, had been coming to China for the better part of 40 years, on and off, right? But since my first visit in 1984, I'd never been there at a time where I felt like there was greater mistrust on both sides. But after just a few days of being together and talking and dialoguing, you felt that distance erased. And so I think what you're doing through this podcast and what all of us have the power to do, to reach out, to listen, and to be in conversation and make such a difference.
Yes. Yeah. So let's continue this. Right.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming to our podcast.
Thank you for having me, Shoke.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing your initiative will continue and grow, so that the more people can feel dignity in their work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shoke. Thank you so much.